Obesity, more genetics than lifestyle? Obesity, together with malnutrition, remains the great non-contagious epidemics of our time, however paradoxical their association may be. There has been much speculation about the causes of obesity, trying to stop or control it through a healthy lifestyle, diet or other less orthodox methods of treatment such as dark chocolate or coffee, apart from the sought-after anti-obesity pill, although they continue in it. In any case, genetics has always been targeted as one of the great causes of this Western epidemic, and it may be much more important than we thought, although we should not give it more prominence than necessary. The role of genetics in obesity. In fact, this time there has not been a study, but up to 2 different investigations published in the prestigious journal Nature, which point to genetics as a great cause of obesity, which could explain why some individuals are more prone to suffer it, taking into account other related conditions, of course. The researchers analyzed samples of up to 300,000 people, detecting more than 140 genetic locations in their DNA that would play some role in the development of obesity. Therefore we could not talk about a gene of obesity, but it would be a polygenetic disease. In addition, new metabolic pathways were identified with an important role in body weight and fat distribution. As a positive point, the knowledge of these genes and new metabolic pathways can help us to develop new therapies and drugs against this scourge, because these genes end up producing proteins that can be blocked. The genetics of fat in obesity. On the one hand, one of the studies focused on how genes determine the place where fat is stored in our body, thus affecting our health. This is important, since it is not the same to store fat at the peripheral level, in arms or legs, than at the central level, belly or belly. In the latter case, the storage of fat at the level of the belly has been shown to increase the risk of suffering from other metabolic disorders such as type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular diseases, as Karen Molke, professor of genetics at the University of North Carolina, recalls. Genes can determine the body's location of fat, thus posing different health risks. If we can find out which genes influence this fat deposit, we could understand the biology that leads to suffering these health conditions, such as insulin resistance or diabetes, the metabolic syndrome or heart disease. The genetics of BMI in obesity. On the other hand, in another research, they focused on the relationship between genes and the body mass index, an estimate of body fat according to height and weight, which is increasingly valued for its low specificity. It turned out that there were up to 97 genetic associations related to BMI, and also the location of these genes was linked to areas that control factors such as appetite or the use of energy by our body. This is the opinion of Dr. Elizabeth Spiliotes, the main author of this second research and professor of internal medicine and computational medicine and bioinformatics at the University of Michigan. Our work clearly demonstrates that the predisposition to obesity and the increase in BMI does not depend on a single gene or genetic change. A large number of genes involved makes it more complicated to find a solution to obesity, and opens the door to new ways of genetic treatment. Conclusion. I think it is necessary to add a conclusion to both studies. At no time has it been said that obesity is purely genetic. We are not saying that. We are talking about genetics playing an important role, but not that obesity is genetic, and therefore if we suffer there is nothing to do about it, because as it is genetic, it is not worth worrying about. Mistake. That is not the attitude or way of thinking. We are talking about different genes involved in a certain part of the population being more predisposed to obesity, but that does not mean that we should throw out a healthy diet, nor the right lifestyle, or all the good health habits that we know work. So, please, let no one use studies like this to say that obesity is genetic and therefore it is impossible to fight against it, because that is called lying to oneself. Learn how to lose 10 pounds in 10 days. Click or tap below to download this free ebook.